Okay, we're live on YouTube and we're recording.
Thank you, Marcia. I call to order the October 22nd meeting of the PARTA Board of Trustees. We'll have the roll call. Marcia will call your name and you respond, please.
Ms. Beck?
I'm here.
Say who appointed
I'm
you.
representing Kent.
Mr. Brockett?
Mr. Brockett, you're on mute. Mr. Brockett, you're on mute. Hold the space bar down and it will take you off mute. There.
Richard Brockett, Northern Portage.
Mr. Childers?
Present from Southern Portage County.
Ms. Davison?
Here, City of Ravenna.
Mr. Ginn?
Here, Middle Portage County. Thank you.
Mr. Lewis?
Thank you. Your mute is on.
Your spacebar trick didn't work, David.
Okay.
But I am still here in Ravenna Township.
Mr. Mansfield?
I'm here representing Franklin Township.
Mr. Murphy?
I am here, City of Kent.
Ms. Tipton?
Morgan Tipton, City of Kent.
Mr. Vitale?
Here, Aurora.
Ms. Wise?
Karen Wise, City of Ravenna.
Mr. Woods?
Marvin Woods, City of Streetsboro.
Ms. Amorine?
Claudia Amrine, PARTA.
Marcia Fletcher, PARTA. Ms. Baba? Ms. Jurish? Mr. Markey?
Justin Markey from Etzel and Andrus, legal counsel to the board.
Mr. Popick?
Clayton Popick, PARTA.
Ms. Schrader?
PARTA.
Mr. Troutman?
Brian Troutman, PARTA.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you for being here. We'd like to welcome back Mr. Mansfield, who's representing Franklin Township. Thank you so much for rejoining us. And also, we'd like to offer our congratulations to Mike for his recent award as a volunteer with the Main Street Kent. Congratulations to you. If everybody will please mute their sound unless you need to talk, and we'll go right to the minutes of the previous meeting.
I'll make a motion to accept those minutes.
It's moved by Karen. We need a second.
I will second. Mike Lewis, Ravenna Township.
Thank you, Mike. Any discussion on the minutes? Thank you, Marcia, for your very thorough job. If there are no questions, everybody in favor, unmute and say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. Okay, that motion passes. We do not have guest communications due to the COVID-19. We'll go next to the general manager's report. Claudia?
Thanks, Dave. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining our meeting tonight. We don't have any resolutions other than to honor Tim Lassen for his board service of many years. Unfortunately, he resigned due to health reasons, but we welcome back RT, who was a board member for quite a long time before he left the board due to the dissolution of Brady Lake. So welcome, RT. I just want to point out a couple things. November is a pretty heavy month. We will have resolutions for both of our budgets, Kent Central Gateway and PARTA, and also to review a Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan, which is a new requirement from the Federal Transit Administration. So I am requesting that the administration committee meet in November, both to review the safety plan and also to consider the award of an architecture and engineering contract that we have put out for requests for qualifications for the last several months. We will be evaluating those and making a recommendation to the committee and to the board in November. And tonight we'll have a presentation by Clayton Popick, our Director of Planning. We're going to take the time each month to try to present an element of our service so that the board, some of the newer members and even members who have been around for a long time keep up kind of with the service that we provide and have a good idea of what we're doing every day. So Clayton will do that tonight, and then that will help us set the stage for updating our transit development plan. Planning is a collaborative process, so there's a number of steps that we will go through to identify how our service should look in the future and how we can get it there. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I have a question. What on your report, Claudia, it says that through September we had 32 collisions of different natures. Some were not our fault, looks like, but how does that compare to last year?
I'm going to turn it over to Kelly for that question.
Actually, that number is down compared to 2019. Really, honestly, COVID and less people on the roads has really contributed to that. We've only had maybe one or two a month here for the last couple of months, so it's been down quite a bit.
So, Kelly, so the criteria is going forward we don't know what they are, but maybe they'll have some kind of a benchmark that we have to meet in relation to number of trips or something like that, or how will they, or you don't know how they're going to do it?
So for our safety plan that we're currently developing in the final stages, we have to look at risks and hazards. So what are our risks, not just driving, but all of our facility risks. So in maintenance and operations and administration. So what are our different risks? I mean, going as far as what if electrical conduits aren't wired properly? That's a fire hazard. So we have to evaluate all of these different risks. So we're in the process of completing that. As far as driving standards go, you know, we've been in the Ohio Transit Risk Pool for a very long time as our insurance carrier. And they monitor our safety events and our collisions. And as far as that goes with our peers, we've won safety awards many years in a row. So we're looking fairly good, knock on wood.
I have another question. These, when it says there are 14 passengers had falls, did some of those falls result in some kind of lawsuit or claim against us?
You know what, anything can result in a lawsuit.
Oh, yeah, I know that. I was just thinking about somebody falling and saying it's the,
yeah.
You think when somebody falls.
When we have falls, a lot of times we have people that fall getting onto or out of the bus,
Right.
just tripping up the step.
Yeah.
We get a lot of those kinds of things, and we report them all because you just never know about that lawsuit.
Mm-hmm.
So our requirement is any event that happens, we report it, because somebody could say it happened and it really didn't. We recorded it all on video so that we make sure if somebody says they weren't injured and then comes back 2 days later with some kind of back injury, we can say,
right,
you know, this wasn't what you said.
I have a question with regards to the collisions. Is there any certain areas that the majority of these collisions happen, or is it kind of just across the board, or is that something that is tracked right now?
That is currently not tracked. That was probably something that will be tracked, but I mean, it's all throughout Portage County. We see probably most of our collisions, and when I say collisions, they're not always even true collisions. They are backing up out of a driveway and hitting a mailbox. So anything we touch, anytime our tires go off the pavement, we consider that a collision.
Okay.
So it may not be a collision with another car. It may be a mailbox hit, or even a marker on the side of the road, like a snow marker or a driveway marker. We consider that a collision.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Are there any other questions? Claudia, thank you, and thank you for the general manager's report, and we all especially appreciate the way you and your staff are handling the COVID and your response to keeping everybody safe. We really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Moving on, there was the committee reports. There was no need for an administrative committee to meet. The finance committee met 2 days ago, and today we got very, very thorough minutes. Thank you for those, and I'll turn this over to Mike to give a report.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. Thank you to Rebecca and everybody that helps put these numbers together. There's a lot of things to go through every day, and I get the chance to look through them, and they're good. Overall, if we look at the finances of PARTA first, the big changes for the month, we drew down another 446,970 in the CARES Act money. Year to date, that brings us just over $3,154,000 drawn down against roughly $4 million. It'll probably turn out to be, it's like $4 million and like 997,000 or something like that. But we are using that money efficiently. It definitely makes a difference to the finances at the bottom line. The other thing that's been real strong for us is the sales tax revenues. They still are coming in real strong. We're not complaining. Year to date, it's over about 148,662 over budget. So that's a good thing. The expenses are the staff has done an excellent job in managing expenses. If you look down, we should be around 75% at this time of year on expenses, and any place that they had control, and we can't control all of this. Some of these things are set in motion at the beginning of the year, and you kind of have to follow along with what you already put in place. But many of these things that they can control, they've done an excellent job, whether it's salaries or, we're using, of course, less fuel, less tires, less supplies, everything. So they've done a real good job. So for the month, budget was 728,376, and the expense actual was 641,356. So it had to the good side, $87,000 roughly. And then if you look year to date, the variance is to the good side, 921,472. So overall, it's been well managed. The big differences are definitely the CARES Act, definitely the sales. We are definitely down with KSU revenues, and I think everybody understands why that is. We'll talk a little bit about that later on. But overall, year to date, we are $3,735,071 to the good. So that's a good thing. Well against budget, well managed, and the numbers have been pretty strong, actually. So if we go on and look at the capital finance report, which is the second report that comes out, this is where we're able to show an amount of $690,883 carried forward. And you can go through and see what money was drawn down. So $374,104 was drawn down for the bus storage facility, and a little bit over $111,000 for the validators. So the only expense out of this was $21,762 to the validators. Normally I don't do this, but I gave Rebecca a heads up. One of the things I wanted to cover, and unfortunately my speakers, everybody at the meeting knew I had a problem with the speakers. There's 1.5 million that's going to be moved into restricted funds because we have an excess. My guess is this is to plan for future needs. However, I wasn't able to hear that. So Rebecca, would you please touch on that just for a moment?
Yes, you're exactly right. Every year when we get federal grants, normally there's a matching component to it. We do have a 5-year projected working document that we're always looking ahead at buses and other capital needs that we may need. And so we are using the excess revenue that we're getting this year to put in our restricted account so that we have those local match funds for future years. Also, Mike, you mentioned the sales tax is up. We still don't know if that will continue to be that way or if the bottom will fall out. So, you know, having that money in reserve for any unknown future things. But I already did move $1.5 million into the restricted account.
Thank you, Rebecca. So that's the summary of numbers for PARTA. Pretty strong, well managed, and I think overall really good job. And then we'll go on to the Kent Gateway. So that's a little bit of the other side of the coin. We've seen improvements basically starting from April moving forward because activity has picked up when it comes to the different with parking and everything else going on the gateway. It's kind of leveled out a little bit. I'm not sure what's going to happen moving forward because we don't have a lot of control over certain things in society right now, such as COVID and how it's managed and what can open, what can't open, what activities are happening and what activities are not happening. So it's good to see some upward movement. It has leveled off a little bit. We're hoping it continues to tick up a little bit through the end of the year. That would be nice. We are at a deficit on the Kent Gateway. And if you take a second to look through the finances, the month was under $14,064 overall. And that was mostly, if you look at everything, it's due to the wages and insurances against the expenses, the expenses against the revenues, which aren't coming in because we're under on almost every category, whether it's the daily parking or the hotel parking or any of the parkings, they're all down because of everything going on. Unfortunately, year to date, that means that we are 101,895 to the negative, which a difference against budget is 121,979. Rebecca did some projections. She thinks it's going to be right around 138,000 negative for the year. And that's assuming everything that we know today. And as everybody knows, that could change tomorrow with everything that we have going on. We knew this ahead of time. This doesn't surprise anybody, or at least I don't think it should. I don't think there's a lot that we can do that we haven't already done to try to improve that. It's an ongoing thing that I know Claudia and the staff are thinking about. So Kent Gateway, that is the summary on Kent Gateway. And at that point, I think I've talked enough and I'd be open to any questions.
Questions for Mike or the committee? If not, thank you very much. That will be filed for audit. There was not a need for the operations or the personnel committee to meet. Does anyone know of any old business that needs to come before us? Then let's go to new business, and we'll have a presentation by Clayton Popick, our planning director. Clayton, are you there?
Getting set up. I'm here, everybody.
Okay, getting set up. Okay. I might mention on the related to the finance committee that next month the meeting is going to be held on Thursday instead of Tuesday. It's going to be the presentation of the budget. And I would urge everybody to consider if you could spend some time with Rebecca going through the budget. It's very, very detailed. And if you haven't ever sat in on a finance committee meeting, this would be the one you would want to attend. I would urge you to do so.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, great. One of the things I'm going to go over tonight is kind of a fixed route service. This is the big buses, everything going within the cities throughout Kent, Ravenna, even some of the villages in the northern part of the county. We're going to discuss kind of how we, what fixed route service is, what each of the routes do, and kind of how we go about evaluating and planning that service. Feel free to stop me and ask questions along the way, or hold your questions to the end. That's up to you. I don't have a problem with either or. So fixed route service, as defined by the National Transit Institute, is transit service provided on a repetitive fixed schedule basis along a specific route with vehicles. Oops, I'm sorry, let me get this out of the way. There we go. With vehicles stopping to pick up passengers at and deliver passengers to specific locations. Our service hours for fixed route service is Monday through Friday, approximately 5:30 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. and Saturdays approximately 7:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. I say approximately because in a passenger's mind, the start time might be whenever they first need to catch that bus. So first thing in the morning. So us defining when we actually hit the road is typically when the bus arrives to the first stop and we come off the road when the bus gets to the last stop. Defining the end time as that last stop can be a little dangerous because again, a passenger might think that they can still catch that bus at 10:30. So if, for example, Carlel or somebody from the call center is talking to a passenger, they might try to inquire as to when that passenger is looking to get back home for that final trip of the night. So that way they don't run into a point where they can't get to their destination because the buses are coming in off the road. Stops, we take stops. Stops are planned along the route. We take stop requests from passengers, drivers, other operations staff give us great feedback on where stops should be. Placement is going to depend on population density. You're going to have a few more stops in, say, a central business district, downtown Kent, downtown Ravenna, versus working your way out into the suburban areas where stops might get spaced a little bit further apart. And then, of course, we want to look at accessibility to that stop and the safety surrounding that stop as well. A goal, kind of an industry standard in transit, is that a passenger will be willing to walk a quarter of a mile or approximately 5 minutes to get to a bus stop. So that's kind of a simple little guide when you're trying to plan a route or plan a stop location is how convenient is it for the person? Will it be worth it to the person to choose transit over, say, a single occupant car? Routes are then broken into an inbound and an outbound trip. And this kind of leads into our transit centers. So transit centers that we operate through our Kent Central Gateway in downtown Kent. This is owned and operated by PARTA and used for Kent area transfers among all the routes that service downtown Kent. The UH Portage Medical Center, we also use that as a Ravenna transit center. We can do Ravenna area transfers are done here. Other transit centers that we service, because we do provide service to neighboring transits. The Robert K. Pfaff Transit Center in downtown Akron, or RKP, is used to meet up with Metro RTA as well as SARTA, which is out of Stark County. When our Cleveland is running, we go to the Southgate Transit Center in Maple Heights. We go to the Stephanie Tubbs Jones Transit Center in downtown Cleveland. And there we can coordinate transfers, give passengers quite a few options when it comes to getting into those cities to continue on to their destinations. A little more detail about the transit centers and kind of what happens at a transit center. The Kent Central Gateway is serviced by 8 routes. We have 10 bus bays there, and 7 of those can be in use at any given time of the day. Buses kind of move in and out of the gateway every 7 to 45 minutes. It just kind of depends on the route. We also do some pulsing and clock facing at the gateway. Pulsing is where we can bring buses in at matching arrival times and send them out at the same depart time. This is why sometimes if you are ever downtown Kent, you may see a line of buses on 59, DePeister, or East Main Street. And the reason that these buses sit stacked behind each other and looks like maybe we put multiple routes out on the same roads, it's just that's when a pulse released, one of our lineups released, and all the buses are heading out to their destinations. One's going to continue on to Ravenna, other one's going to go to South Kent, and another one's going to go towards North Kent. And they just kind of use that small section of roadway surrounding the gateway to start getting to those side streets. Another thing we do at the gateway is clock facing. Clock facing is where you get routes to kind of depart on a predictable interval of a clock face. So for example, most of the routes when the buses are lining up at the gateway depart on the 15s and the 45s of the hour. We also have an indoor reading room, restrooms, ticket sales and information. Trips leaving the gateway are considered outbound, and they're inbound when they're coming in. And that's kind of how you, again, how you design a route is with an outbound trip and an inbound trip. Transfers are issued and accepted at the gateway for continued trips only. So for example, you can come into the gateway on the Ravenna bus and say you need to get out to South Water Street in Kent. You can ask your Ravenna driver for a transfer and then get on that next bus for free. The UH Portage Medical Center, again, we use this as a transit center as well. This is serviced by 4 routes. You can see anywhere from 2 to 4 buses sitting at UH. Frequency or headway is how often a bus is coming. So you can see buses coming in and out of the hospital every 30, all the way up to 120 minutes. The Wyndham-Garrettsville does have a pretty big headway on it because it's going all the way out to Hiram and back. But the more local routes may run within every half hour to every hour. We do pulsing and clock facing there. This is not quite the glamorous transit center that we have in Kent. It's more of a shelter with a pull-off, but it does make for a very convenient place to bring buses in and kind of let them stage for their next trips out. Again, trips leaving here are outbound with the exception of our 35 route. Its route origination is in Kent. So when it goes out to Ravenna, it's going outbound towards the hospital, whereas everything in Ravenna will be going inbound towards the hospital. Again, we issue transfers here as well for anybody continuing on trips. And we only do transfers on continued trips. You can't come into the hospital on the Kent bus and then get back to Kent on that transfer. You're supposed to be able to just keep your trip moving, and then you'll pay for your return trip again. Again, other transit centers that we use are just to easily make connections with neighboring transits. We do allow transfers between those, transfers to be issued and accepted between those services as well. So Metro RTA and SARTA in downtown Akron, we issue and accept transfers for free. With Cleveland RTA, we will give a passenger a transfer to get on an RTA bus for free because they paid us $5. But when they come back to us with an RTA transfer, they'll pay that difference of, so it's, I think RTA fares are about $250 now. They'll pay us $275 to build back towards that $5 that we would have normally charged them to come back. But we'll accept a discount because they already paid a neighboring RTA. So the fixed route service breakdown starts with our off-campus local service. You'll sometimes hear us refer to this as the county service. The communities that we service with these routes are Stowe, Kent, Ravenna, Wyndham, Garrettsville, and Hiram. These are $1 per trip or 50 cents per trip for the reduced fare. KSU students, faculty, and staff ride free with their KSU ID, and this is per the contract with KSU. On-campus routes or on-campus local, or we'll call them KSU routes or campus routes. You'll hear a lot of lingo, but that's typically what we're referring to. These are planned and operated by us, but they are based on data that is provided to us by KSU. So they might give us updated enrollment data, pass sale data. They might give us what they expect to fill for beds going into each school year, and then we can plan. Do we want to be core campus heavy for a heavy residential hall semester, or do we want to be heavy commuters because they're anticipating a lot of outlying parking sales, and we'd use those routes to bring them into the core of campus. All of these routes, and I'll go over what distinguishes the routes when I talk about each individual route. It's based on the route number as well. All of these routes are free for everyone regardless of a KSU ID, and that is per the contract with KSU as well. Our third fixed route service is our express service. We provide service into downtown Akron at $1 per trip for everybody, and we provide express service into downtown Cleveland for $5 a trip for everybody. Currently, that service is suspended, but it is something that we try to offer when we're not in the middle of COVID.
Clayton, go back to the fare is $1 or 50 cents. What is the difference? Is it age? The second item, $1 trip or 50 cents for trip reduced. What causes it to be reduced?
So reduced fare can be based on disability and age. You can have, excuse me, there's an application process. Or if you're 65 and over, you can use your state issued ID and or Medicare card to verify that you are 65 and over, and you'll pay the 50 cents for those trips. If you have a disability, there's an application process, and we can issue you an ID to show the driver that you are eligible to pay that 50 cents.
Thank you.
So the other thing too that comes from the reimbursement and I might need Becky to help me with this one, or Claudia, but so when we turn in the ridership counts at the end of the year, with those categories, with those reduced fare categories, through the state, we can get reimbursed the difference of our full fare trip. Right? Explain it right? Okay.
Right.
And so that's you know, we do get that money back from offering that benefit.
So when we talk about the elderly and disabled funding that we get through ODOT each year, that is based on the prior year or the year before that, actual ridership on both fixed route and on our demand response service. So that should match up with the amount of reduced fare that we provided in the reporting year. And so that's why that number fluctuates a little bit each year. You might recall when we raised our demand response fares a couple of years ago, part of the benefit to that is that it did increase our reimbursement through the state. Good with that?
Good.
Okay, so this next slide. So this takes us to our system map. I apologize, it is really zoomed out, but I wanted to show each of the routes that we provide, and I'm going to so starting here in Kent, we have our Cleveland route that goes all the way up to Streetsboro, Maple Heights, and then we jog over into downtown Cleveland and then out to the east side. And again, I'll talk about the routes a little bit more detail, but I just wanted to kind of give everybody this visual. And then we've got our Akron route down here, serves downtown Akron, and then all the local stuff is clustered here in the center. And we do everything in Kent, Ravenna, all the way up into the northeastern villages. Brings us to our first route. So I told everybody we've got route numbers and route names. Route numbers allow us to kind of work with those who may not be English proficient. So having a number, you know, for example, an international student can start learning our system based on the route numbers, kind of a universal system, versus our individual route names. So our first route is our 30, our Interurban West. We run this route Monday through Saturday. It's 2 buses every 30 minutes, and this is all the service between Kent and Stowe. So we start here in downtown Kent, work our way out West Main Street, Silver Meadows Boulevard, up Graham to Fish Creek, into the Stowe Kent Plaza, where we hit Meyer, out to the KSU Airport, and then back to Target to end that outbound trip. From Target, then we work our way back, Kent Road to Fish Creek, Silver Meadows, West Main Street, and downtown Kent. Then our 35, our Interurban East route, Monday through Saturday, we put 3 buses on this route, and they run every 30 minutes. This is how the 30 and the 35 can meet up every half an hour at the gateway. So this is the Kent to Ravenna service. It's all the way from downtown Kent straight out State Route 59. We do pull into C Midway at KSU, Campus Point, Pebblebrook and Walmart, and then across to downtown Ravenna and into the hospital. From there, that route traces itself all the way back into Kent when it turns around and does the inbound trip. Our 40 route, or our Suburban North, runs Monday through Saturday. This is 1 bus every 45 minutes. This service is North Kent, East Main Street, Lake Street, Manaway Street, Hudson Drive. This starts at downtown Kent, out to East Main Street, C Midway, 6th Avenue in Ohio, then across Lake Street where we hit up the Rockwood Apartments, the Lake Street Apartments, and then up towards the high school and middle school. This other section over here is a loop versus the straight line, which is back here on the southern part of the route. That loop is done clockwise in the morning, counterclockwise in the afternoons, and then the bus shoots back across Lake Street and into the gateway again. So the 45 Suburban South, this is another Monday through Saturday route. One bus every 45 minutes. It times with the 40 every time that it pulls into the gateway. And then every hour and a half, it times with the 30 and the 35. So the goal is every hour and a half to have the 4 main routes that service the gateway sitting at the gateway, ready for a same departure time. This is South Kent, South Water Street, Franklin Avenue. It leaves the gateway and heads towards Lincoln Street, where it hits the west side of Kent State's campus, Summit Street to the Kentway Senior Living Center, down South Water Street to Marks, past UH Kent, Indian Valley, back up Franklin Avenue towards the post office, and then back to the gateway as well. Our 70 route, which is our Wyndham-Garrettsville route. This is Monday through Friday. We put an LTV on this one. LTVs are what we send typically on door to door, but we do keep a couple of larger ones in the fleet to do some of these smaller routes. This route runs about every hour and a half to 2 hours. It just kind of depends on the time of the day, and it also depends on what it's doing. A couple of the trips stop at Garrettsville. A couple of the trips continue on to Hiram. This is for Northeast Portage County. Starts at UH, up 88 to Freedom, across to Wyndham. We hit the Wyndham Family Renaissance Center, up into Garrettsville. Note about Garrettsville is it is the only fresh food source with 2 grocery stores for that area. So we try to time the route so that way people can leave Wyndham or leave Hiram and get into Garrettsville and do some grocery shopping and then get back to their communities. This is a flag down route. Outside of the village limits, you are allowed to call ahead and ask for the bus to stop to pick you up. It will not deviate. You have to live along that route and be outside of the village limits. Not much of this part of the service gets used, but it is something that is available to kind of help passengers along the way there. The 80 is, now this is the Ravenna service. So our 80 route, our Raven West is Monday through Friday route. It's one bus that runs every 60 minutes. There is a small gap in the middle of the day where we don't run this route. And again, that's just kind of come from planning and rider demand. Cleveland Road, it starts with at the hospital, hits the Social Security office and cuts across over towards Infirmary and Cleveland Road, drops down Jones past the Rock, does a loop out to the administration building, and then straight out to the east side of town to Giant Eagle and Marks. The goal of this route is to get people out of the McElrath neighborhood, get them into downtown Ravenna, and then get them out to the grocery stores, which is again Ravenna's fresh food source. Our 85 route is the Raven East. It's a Monday through Friday route. On Saturdays, the 35 route, when it leaves Kent, it will come and do the southern skills portion. And that is maintained just because that's something that the 35 has always done. So when we cut the 85 loose kind of on its own route, we didn't implement Saturday service to save some hours. And then we allow the Saturday 35 to still kind of do this portion of the route. This is one bus every 60 minutes. So these 2 buses meet up at UH and they pulse out of there at the top of the hour. This does the Skills neighborhood here to the south, down off South Prospect Street, and it does the Woodgate neighborhood up off of Freedom Street. And then again, it goes out to the east side. This one will do Aldi, Longmeadow Nursing Home, and then it'll pull into Marks. So our 90 Akron Express route, this is a Monday through Friday route, one bus, 7 trips out of Kent, runs about every hour and a half to 2 hours. It's KCG, KSU. We do 3 of the trips will service Brimfield off of Talmadge Road. Then it hits East Market Street, University of Akron, Summit County Courthouse, and then it ends at the Metro RTA RKP Transit Center before coming back to Kent. Our 100 Cleveland Express route is a Monday through Friday route. This is another route that we put an LTV on. Sometimes when it's running during the school year on Friday afternoons, because of the passenger load heading back home, we will throw a bus on that route just so that everybody has, kind of a comfortable ride up to Cleveland. This starts at KSU at the Student Center, goes to the Gateway, and then Streetsboro, Southgate, downtown Cleveland. We hit the Cleveland Clinic, University Circle, Lewis Stokes VA Clinic, and Cleveland State University before turning around and coming back. And then over 50 series routes. This is the KSU contract service. Our goal here is to try to keep 10 buses on the road across all the routes and to keep the service running about every 12 to 15 minutes. Starting with our campus loop, our 51 route. This is clockwise circulation around campus, and recently we've started running the bus into the gateway due to kind of Kent State's westward expansion towards downtown Kent. Same thing with the reverse loop, the number 53, it's counterclockwise circulation, and it will go downtown as well. Our Allerton route, the 55, is strictly just for service from the south side here. The Allerton Sports Complex is a big commuter lot when school's in full session, and brings students all the way up into the student center. The 57, our Stadium Loop, it's kind of a catch-all route for when Saturdays during the semester or KSU breaks. Our 58 route brings everybody in from the stadium, the Summit East parking lot, these apartment complexes through here, gets all of those commuting students into the student center, and then even does a lap around front campus past all of the academic buildings. And then our final route on campus is our Stadium Night Loop. This is our 59 route. It provides East Summit Street service for after hours. Deviation on campus is allowed with this one. One important thing to remember with the 50 series routes is that it's not exclusive service. It's open to the public. We publish schedules for it. These are just the routes that we plan as part of the contract service. So again, we plan those routes based on data given to us from Kent State each school year. So that brings us to, now that we've kind of had an overview of service, I'm going to kind of run through some quick criteria on service evaluation, some things we do internally. Some things we do internally is customer satisfaction. We can monitor this through surveys as well as comments received by customer service. We're going to design service based on customer need. Again, this would be another customer service component. Customer need is also, we get a lot of feedback from operations for this one as well. It's good when you hear things from the drivers as to what we should be doing. They're basically, from a planning perspective, they're our eyes on the road. Road soups are another good resource, as well as dispatch and the scheduling office. Some external factors for service evaluation is we look at industry standards, OPTA, or the Ohio Public Transit Association, the American Public Transit Association, APTA. There's also AASHTO. This is the American, I always forget this, I'm sorry. It's the American Association of Safe Highways and Transportation Organization is what it comes out to. So it's a big planning resource that I use when I'm creating proposals and things like this, that defines, what the services are. It has a lot of design standards for bus stops and pull-offs and things like that. And then, of course, I mentioned earlier the National Transit Institute, the NTI. It's an FTA-funded Rutgers University program that provides classroom resources as well as webinar-type resources for transit professionals. And then we do regional coordination as well. So what is Metro RTA doing? What is Cleveland RTA doing? What is SARTA and NeoRide doing? Any other neighboring transit that we would meet up with, we would want to continue to monitor what they're doing, so that way we can ensure that our connections are still being made. So things that we can do when we anticipate change, we look back at things like January 2017. That was our last major service change with the fixed route system. We ask ourselves questions, was anything not addressed? Look back at surveys that we did preparing for that service change. If we were able to implement 95% of the suggestions and requests by the public, what else wasn't, what was the other 5% that wasn't addressed? We might be updating a transit development plan, which Claudia mentioned earlier. We could be completing or updating a strategic plan as well. Again, I mentioned earlier, what are agencies doing that we make connections with to ensure that we're still making good, timely connections for our passengers. And then the last big one is, what has the Akron Metropolitan Area Transportation Study put out there for us to use as guidance, or AMATS. You'll probably hear the acronym thrown out a lot more than the full name. And that's the image that I put at the top there. They just released, last month's policy committee meeting just approved their draft transit plan for this year, and it's got a lot of helpful suggestions. So we had a lot of input with it as well. So we were able to promote to the AMATS community stuff that we've accomplished, while at the same time receiving suggestions on stuff we could be doing from AMATS. This type of evaluation allows us to take more of a proactive versus a reactive approach. So when we're constantly looking at areas of improvement rather than waiting on the complaints, we can do our own analysis of service gaps. You know, where do we not go? Underserviced areas. How long is our service day? Frequency. You know, how long is the wait for a passenger? And accessibility. Are bus stops easily accessible for all? Again, a proactive approach is implementing suggestions from surveys versus waiting on the complaints to roll in. Being a part of a community development. You know, when communities are of the mindset of transit-oriented development, it really helps us out in the long run, because we're at the table, we're helping pointing out, you know, what our vehicles can and cannot access when it comes to what infrastructure is being built in and around cities. Referencing census data is very important. Ensuring that we provide service to those who truly need it, and census data is a great resource for that. And then, of course, one of the final things that we look at when we take into consideration suggestions and planning is, are we looking at an expansion in hours, or maybe just an adjustment in hours, where an adjustment would keep us kind of at a net zero increase or decrease in hours, versus an expansion, which is an obvious investment into the system. Some things that we've been looking at for the near future. North Water Street, again, this is where I talked about, you know, we're seeing what community development is coming about. We know that North Water Street in Kent is becoming kind of an area of developmental interest. We know that there's street improvements coming. One of our goals is, once those street improvements are made, getting us in there before the development can really finish, because if we have our presence first, potential riders that we could be taking there wouldn't have had a chance to find their other modes of transportation, because we're already providing service there. Other areas to look at, Brimfield and Akron, for example. AMATS has suggested these are areas that we want to focus on in the coming years. Metro RTA has been updating their strategic plan over the last couple of years. So again, we want to ensure that we're making those good connections. Currently, right now, we provide service to Brimfield with the Akron Express. So it's going to come down to asking ourselves, is using the express route a sustainable mode to provide local service to the Brimfield residents? Another area that we're looking at is Hiram. We restricted some trips to Hiram in 2017 because there wasn't much demand for it. Well, now there's a few requests, and a few on that route is a good size number to kind of take seriously. You know, adding a couple more trips throughout, you know, adding even one more trip on that day clears up some, it doesn't increase the service hours, it cleans up some slack time, and it provides an easy fix for those who need to get between Hiram and Garrettsville as we start facing bad weather. Again, as I mentioned earlier, Garrettsville, for that area, it's important that we keep service moving in and out of Garrettsville pretty frequently, because that is the fresh food source for Hiram and Wyndham. And then I believe that is all that I have. So does anybody have any questions for me?
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How many passengers did we serve for the first 9 months of 2020 compared to the first 9 months of 2019? And how would you change, by the way, it's a very good presentation, but how would you change things, assuming that COVID-19 is going to be lingering? It appears for certain, not for certain, but it's going to be lingering the first half of 2021, it looks like.
So, I mean, that's a good question. Without my spreadsheets in front of me right now, I know we are down approximately 40 to 50% right now over this time last year. And that was to be expected. We made service adjustments. We cut service earlier in the year. And when you cut service, you're going to cut your ridership. So we brought that service back. I think making major service plans and changes during the pandemic wouldn't be that great. I think we'd have to ride the wave out into 2021 to truly see what the effects of the pandemic were versus making those plans in the middle of the pandemic.
Do you think that, like the airlines are just, bleeding red ink, but do you think because of COVID that people are, I mean, you're down because of COVID, but if that doesn't change, would we save money, or if we didn't have as many buses on the road, or would we, how's this going to work financially, I guess, is my question.
So obviously, yes, less buses on the road would be money saved. However, the big component right now, and this is what we did with Kent State, was more buses on the road means we are able to social distance on the buses.
True.
We dropped from being able to put 50 to 60 passengers on one bus to 17 to 20. So that's.
If I could jump in. One of the things, Frank, that you have to keep in mind is that the CARES Act was designed so that some of the things that we're doing, which is providing transportation to essential workers and people that got to go back and forth to the grocery stores and to work and things along those lines, that we would have some of the financial resources to keep that mainstream infrastructure running and functioning. So trying to compare our ridership numbers from 2020 to 2019 is quite honestly, that's a futile attempt at
Right.
it's not going to matter.
Yeah.
When we start to come out of this, when we get a break that we all desperately need, I'm sure we'll start to see our ridership numbers turning around. But in the meantime, one of the things that we are taxed with trying to continue to do is to keep an infrastructure in place that does provide those trips to people going to and from Robinson or UH. We do provide about 70 some passenger trips a week to dialysis patients and long-term care facilities, things along this nature. So comparing transportation ridership numbers between 19 and 20, quite honestly, it's not really going to produce anything for us other than what we already know, which is our ridership is hurting. There's a lot of businesses that are hurting, and we're still just doing the best we can to keep it on the road. And quite honestly, that's what the CARES Act money was designed to do, is provide for us the ability to keep that infrastructure in place.
Oh, I definitely agree with that. And I was thinking about that as he was talking. Because I actually voted in Ravenna at the office where you vote. But has there been a flurry of more ridership because people want to get to the voting places or go to?
Well, what we have been approached by the PCAB, Portage County Administration Building, to detour our routes because there are so many people standing in line over there doing early voting. So where our route normally would go through there, we now are detouring around there. But yeah, there's a lot of people that are going and taking the bus to that PCAB location when it's feasible for them to get to and from early voting.
Thank you.
I have one question. Is there any sort of demand for more service to like parks and other recreational areas within the county?
I've been approached about stuff like that before, yes. I actually just had a discussion about this with the health district the other day. We provide, I want to say, a good handful of our routes, and we promoted it. There's a big sign at the gateway. We service, without thinking about each and every route, we service a handful of parks and we service a handful of trailheads throughout the area, just by nature of the way the routes run. Yes.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to thank you for your very informative presentation. I learned a few things today that I did not know before. It was really heartening to hear that that addressing the food needs and the fact that, there are certain areas that need to have greater access to fresh foods and markets, that Portage is providing that in a robust, that PARTA is providing that in a robust way for Portage County. That was really heartening to hear from you.
Yes, that is, fresh food sources is very important. Oddly enough, it is, I can't say that routes are fully designed off of that, that purpose alone. I mean, there's a lot of factors into designing routes, but I know with Ravenna, getting everybody out to where the 3 grocery stores are located, played a huge factor in 2017 when we expanded service in Ravenna. You don't often see multiple routes in one city starting at one location and ending at the same location. For example, they start at the gateway and then they go off to opposite ends of the town. The goal in Ravenna was to start at the same point, go through opposite end neighborhoods, and then you're going to end at the same point out at Marks.
Are there other questions? Thank you so much. And I would urge all the board members, if you haven't, just plan to take a trip sometime. If you want to go to Ravenna or to Hiram or someplace, just get on and ride the bus and see for yourself how it feels. Thank you, Clayton. We really appreciate your presentation.
Thank you. And have your badges with you, because then that's your bus pass.
Oh, good to know.
Good job.
What badge? I don't have a badge.
I was just about to ask the same question.
Yeah, so since we haven't had an in-person meeting, you will get a badge.
Woo, okay.
And a nameplate. We just picked up your nameplates.
Oh.
For the table.
I did hear you get up in front of the camera and say, "Do you know who I am?" That works too, just like.
Oh, I think that's not a good plan.
So
I knew that.
we'll figure this out.
Good. Okay, good. The next item I'd like to do is introduce a resolution. Resolution 2020-10-01. A resolution by the Portage Area Regional Transportation Authority Board of Trustees honoring Timothy J. Lassen, board member, in appreciation for his dedication and service. Could we have a motion, please?
I so move.
And a second?
A second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. Any comments? Claudia?
No, again, we just appreciate Tim's service on our board for many years and wish him well. And again, welcome RT back. I can see you now. So hi, RT.
Hey, thank you very much. We wish Tim the best and welcome back to RT. Could you call the roll, please, Marcia?
Yes, Mr. Woods, is he not with us now? No. Mr. Lewis?
Yeah.
Mr. Childers?
Yes.
Ms. Wise?
Yes.
Ms. Davison?
Yes.
Ms. Tipton?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Mr. Vitale?
Yes.
Mr. Brockett?
Yes.
Ms. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mr. Ginn?
Yes. The motion passes. Thank you very much. I don't believe there's a need for an executive session. Justin Markey, do you have any comments, our attorney?
I do not.
Okay. Thank you for being here with us tonight. If there are no other items to come before us, we need a motion for adjournment.
So made.
Thank you, Mike. And Jack seconded. All in favor say aye.
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 Pose the same sign. That motion passes. Thank you so much and keep well. We'll see you next week.
Stay safe,
No,
everyone.
next month.
Thanks. Next month.
Thank you.